Hi guys, we're going to start some revision on sporting behaviours for the GCSE PE paper 2 and we're focusing particularly on Edexcel PE, but I'm sure it'll cover many exam boards. So when we're looking at sporting behaviours, we're really talking about deviance, sportsmanship and gamesmanship are the key terms that we need to understand. We really need to think about also the reasons for these behaviours and the consequences of these behaviours. Now, this is often an area that could easily come up as a 9-mark question. So you've got AO1, AO2, AO3. So AO1 is the facts and key terms. AO2 is the applied examples, and AO3 is sort of like your evaluative comments that you'll make about it. So as we go through it, start thinking about, right, if you were doing a deviance question or a sportsmanship question, what facts do you know about it? And it might be deviance and sportsmanship in your answer. What are the facts, i.e. definitions of them? The application, the AO2 would be your examples, and AO3 would be your evaluative points, probably the consequences as we go through this. So just have that in mind as you're making notes and your revision. So starting off with what is deviance as the definition, and it's up here on the screen. It's when you're breaking the rules or cheating. So when you're not following the rules of the game and you're cheating, and most examples there, that would be your AO1 point, and AO2 would be your examples. So things like drug abuse, match fixing, and violence or fouling players, etc. Now there's 3 simple examples, and then I've put on 2 multiple choice type questions and say which one of these is deviance, and you could work it out through a process of elimination. You can pause it on the screen and figure it out now if you want to, and I'll tell you the answers in a second. So if we take this first one here, and it's always good to break these down and figure out if they're not deviants, what are they? So this point here, deviance would be the doping in athletics. The accepting referee's decision would be fair play. Shaking hands would be fair play. And verbally insulting a batsman in cricket is more gamesmanship. Faking an injury in football, missing a penalty, shaking hands at the end of the game, and taking performance-enhancing drugs. And you can see the theme of performance-enhancing drugs as deviance. Faking injury would be more gamesmanship. Missing a penalty in hockey, well, it's nothing, it's just missing it. And shaking hands is your fair play. So, reasons for someone becoming deviant, and this could be another fact in AO1 if it was a 9-mark question, or it could be just on its own, what are the reasons for deviancy. So we have essentially the extrinsic rewards. Extrinsic comes from external, so things like money and fame, prize money, things like that, reasons why someone might cheat. Other things might be pressures. So pressures from other people outside, the pressures from coaches, pressures from sponsors, and so on and so forth. Or it could just be dropping in performance and the inability to keep up with the performance. Maybe as a player's aging, they might take some performance-enhancing drugs to keep them going, which is in fact linked to cycling and sort of what Lance Armstrong did to continue being at the top of his game, which would be the AO2. If you're linking AO2 and more generically points here, the examples, so the commercial side of sport gives players the sponsorship, and you could pick any number of players or performers, an example of why they may become deviant because of the amount of money that they're earning is relevant. So Tiger Woods earns millions and billions of millions of dollars. Any sort of player you could refer to. Pressures from others, so coaches might have pressures to keep their job, for example, and encourage deviance that way. Sponsors may demand performances because obviously if a performer plays well, it looks good for the sponsors and their products. So they have that sort of pressures on players to become more deviant and cheat. And then consequences. This is quite a big area, and it comes from different type of questions that you might have. So the generic consequences for the player is this section here. These are some examples, AO2, and this is more of sort of consequences for the sport. So I've broken it into player and sport. So if we take the player, the consequences could be fines and bans, could lose sponsors, could the player could gain a bad reputation, and transfers and stuff like that might affect them, and they might not be snapped up in the transfer market. Could easily be stripped of the medals, and in other extreme circumstances could be imprisoned. So here are just some different examples where players or sports performers have been their sanctions for their consequences for their behaviour, their deviance. So Lance Armstrong was involved with a big. Lance Armstrong was a Tour de France cyclist, and he one of the world's most famous Tour de France cyclists, most successful in history. Essentially came out that he was performance enhancing drugs, or was on performance enhancing drugs, and lost his sponsors as a consequence. Ivan Toney is a more recent football player for Brentford at the time, was suspended for a large portion of the season because of his gambling, and it's linked into match fixing, where you, as a professional footballer, aren't able to gamble on you. And he gambled on himself, or bet on himself, and he was suspended and fined for match fixing. In 2006, Juventus, Lazio, and Fiorentina were relegated because of match fixing. And another more recent one in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the GB 4x100 relay team were stripped of their medals, their silver medals, because of one of the runners had taken performance-enhancing drugs. So you can see the consequences of the deviance, and make sure you know at least one of the examples, and I've given you 4 good examples that you can use. So as a sport, we have impact on the reputation for the sport, or it creates a bad image of the sport, which in turn leads to other consequences. So there's often a loss of income for the sport due to maybe loss of media and loss of sponsors not willing to be involved with the sport that has a bad reputation and bad image. It could lose interest in fans, so ticket sales could go down. It could lose popularity, and viewers could go down. So that, if you think about the golden triangle, is all a knock-on effect, and it can have a negative impact on the sport. And you could lose participation rate. So kids at grassroots level may not want to get involved in that sport, or parents might not push their kids towards that sport because of the bad reputation, the bad image that sport might have. The other thing that you could talk about, which I haven't put on the screen, but it could be that the national governing bodies spend a lot of time focusing on combating the deviance, and therefore they may focus on the wrong aspects and not develop the grassroots as much, and so on and so forth. But I'll stick with these points on the board and on the screen, and try to pick at least 3 of them out that you can just commit to your memory. Okay, so the next area we're focused on is the difference between sportsmanship and gamesmanship. Often a very common question, just this first top boxes here. What's the difference between sportsmanship and gamesmanship? And I'm sure you all can remember sportsmanship is playing by the rules, gamesmanship is bending the rules. Then you've got different sort of ways of wording it. And sportsmanship tends to come up maybe a little bit more detailed than gamesmanship, whereas gamesmanship is literally just bending the rules and not breaking them. Whereas sportsmanship has all these other aspects like fair play, respecting opponents, being gracious in victory and defeat. Now, there are some other points that you could link into. We've got the examples here: shaking hands at the end of a game for sportsmanship, kicking a ball out of play if someone was injured, and these examples here that are taken from the exam board spec. So claiming you've caught a cricket ball when you notice at the ground first, time wasting, ball tampering, and so on and so forth. Now, the sort of stretching and challenging points you might want to be making, if it was a 9 marker, for example, or a little bit of a bigger question, gamesmanship has increased in the past, and that's due to the commercial factors that we talked about earlier. The financial rewards for cheating. It's not cheating in this point. Gamesmanship is bending the rules, but it has the same impact and the same reasons as deviance. The financial side of it. In terms of sportsmanship, there is some sports where they still have this really strong unwritten code of conduct, and those sort of sports you don't see a lot of gamesmanship in, so like tennis and golf. But they do creep in at some points, but there are some sports where sportsmanship is heavily associated with their sports. So one of the questions that would then go on to, once you've talked about the difference between gamesmanship and sportsmanship, is why is sportsmanship so important? Or why is it important for a professional athlete to show sportsmanship, and so on and so forth? Well, firstly, national governing bodies will always encourage sportsmanship, and they will do that through sanctioning negative behaviour, so sanctioning deviance in the normal way with fines, punishments, the sort of the consequences I talked about earlier, or they might add rewards. There used to be a spot on the Europa League in football where you could get on through a fair play spot, but that doesn't exist anymore. But there are always those fair play awards and rewards given to teams in, say, like the World Cup and so on and so forth. Now, that's one area that national government bodies really push for the idea of sportsmanship. But why are they doing it? Okay, so elite performers, they become role models, and it's always useful to put this point in if you get an exam question talking about elite performers and their influence, so they have a role model effect. And if they're setting a good example, their behaviour will be seen and copied by youngsters, and then that will filter down to the grassroots level. So, and what you'll see is there's a knock-on effect of those sportsmanship behaviours being picked up at the grassroots level with the youth sports. Performers are also always in the media, so, and if this is more about the impact on sports, the sport in general, so their good behaviour reflects positively on the sport as a whole, which then can lead to more sponsorship deals either to the performers or to the sports. And then that in turn should increase the participation rates at grassroots level. So both of them sort of have a positive effect on the grassroots level. So when you're seeing these sort of questions about sportsmanship, focus on like the good examples and then the impact it has on the kids at the grassroots levels. Okay, now this one question has come up once, and it's worth just having in the back of your mind about how it links into it. And this is questioning whether video replays are good or bad in sports scenarios, and linking that into the sporting behaviours. So video replays such as slow motion and VAR is sort of like your example if you were going to use this. Now, there are difficulties with it, other than obviously benefits of helping the referees make correct decisions and helping sanction players and trying to eliminate deviant behaviour. There are some negative sides, and those negative sides are things like it slows the game down because the pauses in play where you've got to check the videos and communicate with the assistant video referees and so on and so forth. But what it also does is it leads managers and the players to question the use of the technology, and it's currently a debate at the moment in the Premier League. It sort of adds to when you're questioning the validity of something such as the VAR system, it can players and managers and fans can lose confidence in the system. What it can also do is highlight incorrect decisions, and that sort of undermines the role of the referees. So again, that's a negative aspect of using video replays and the media showing video replays or VARs of games. And then also it might show the players getting away with deviance that they've been missed in the past. Sometimes though there can be retrospective punishments applied. Now, the other aspect that's linked into this, and this is linked to gamesmanship as well, is that people may feel that gamesmanship is an increasing thing, and it never used to be this bad, but it's getting worse. But this is probably the case because there is more televised sport and there's more media involved in sport. So we may feel that actually it isn't the fact that gamesmanship is increasing, it's just that we are more aware of it. So that's one sort of debatable question you might put in, is that the AO3 sort of comments that you might make about gamesmanship and deviance in general, that it maybe isn't increasing, it's just more noticeable because of the media and the video replays that are available to us as fans. Right, so they're the main areas on sporting behaviours for you to revise, and good luck on your exams.